Hi, my name is Elaine Jack. I am taking trauma and resilience across the lifespan. My instructor is Stephanie McEwen. I am doing a presentation on trauma-informed practices. I did a questionnaire to two of my coworkers. The first one would be Jennifer. She is the teacher and the school principal at the school that I work at, and myself. I'll be answering the same questions as the both of them.
I'm a teacher librarian, and I've worked as a teacher in Winnipeg, in Surrey, and Cowichan now.
My role is school principal in Drinkwater Elementary, School District 79.
My position is the Indigenous support worker. I've worked there for the past 10 years.
Trauma is a life experience that affects your life in a negative way.
Okay.
So it can range from mental, emotional, and physical, and the effects can take a lifetime.
Trauma is our body and mind's lasting emotional response to a distressing or disturbing event or events that have taken place.
Okay. Has many faces: abuse, neglect, separation from parents, high conflict divorces, abusing substance, accidents, illnesses, or death of a loved one.
Depends on the type of trauma, but I have experienced a wide range. I had a student who was apprehended at birth, and he would go into students' backpacks and take food. He would also eat his whole lunch at once, so that that sense of food and nourishment that you would get at an early age from your mother, he was missing that, and that kind of went throughout. I once dealt with a student who would just cry in class, and his mother was 14, and it was the grandmother raising him, and he was just a sad boy, and I think it had to do with the rejection of from his mom. I've also taught a boy who would shout out impulsively when I would be speaking, and his father was arrested the year before. So witnessing that. So lots of different types of trauma and expressions. Yeah.
Okay.
That I have seen might include difficulties in regulating emotions, aggression, fear of people and or situations, inability or struggles to form trusting, healthy relationships with their peers or with adults,
Okay.
Some hopelessness, depression, and an attempt to control or micromanage other people and situations.
Okay. Of aggression towards the teachers, the support staff, and their peers. I could walk into a classroom and I could just see that. Not listening to the teachers, the support workers, and the administration. They have low academic, they can't do the work. Self-harm, difficulty in concentrating in school. All these could be factors of trauma.
A fight usually happens on the playground. You can see lots of altercations happening on the playground. But I did have a student, and I'm not sure what his trauma was exactly, but they moved frequently, and he would throw chairs and he would destroy the classroom, and we would have to do room clear. So very highly violent boy. I know his mother worked in a bar in a very rough area of Winnipeg, and he was always worried and emotionally worried for his mother. So yeah, that was just one example of the fight. With flight, it could be running. Although I haven't had kids in my classroom who would run, our schools sometimes would have kids who would run home. And then freeze is just shutting down. Shut down. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Include fighting with the teachers when they are struggling with understanding what's required.
Yeah.
Maybe avoiding participating in activities that they feel they do not know how to do.
Yeah.
When unsure of somebody, either a peer or another adult's reaction, they may run away from the classroom, may run away from the school.
Yeah.
It could also look like withdrawing within the classroom, you know, those hoodies up over their head into that fetal position. It can also look like bullying. They can have some obsessive behaviors. Especially around control pieces, and one that I often see are things like headaches and stomach aches with children.
Yeah. Fight appears in a student's behavior if they're not complying to the teachers or the support staff. Like they just refuse to do anything. They just sit there. They don't want to do nothing. And fight is when the student is showing resistance. They don't want to do it. They just don't want to do it. And freeze might be unmotivated. They don't care. They just don't want to do it.
So the emotional one can be relationship based, and it could be just really having a hard time on the playground, in the classroom, and that's why it's really important for the teacher to build a relationship. Cognitive could be a wide range of skills. It could be fine motor, it could be literary and oral language, it could even be mathematical with logistical and computational thinking. Behavioral, that could be just high risk behavior, so maybe climbing to the top of a cupboard and trying to get something up top and just taking those kinds of risks.
Okay.
So if I just lump it all together, I do believe that trauma can have a lot of impact on the development of a child's brain, depending on the severity and the length of time of the trauma that the child has experienced. The child's developing brain can weaken some of those neural pathways for cognitive development, and then they really strengthen the survival pathways, and that's where we start to see some of that fight, flight, or freeze. We know through research that a child, by the time they're 3, 80% of their brain, it's roughly 80% of the adult size, and that early childhood trauma specifically can have some long-term lasting negative effects on cognition, healthy attachments, and emotional regulation.
Well, emotionally, the student will have difficulty identifying their feelings. Cognitively, students struggle with learning disabilities, language development is poor, and behavioral impulsive behavior and aggression is often noticeable.
With most students who have experienced trauma, choice and control are the most important. So giving a wide range of choice with activity, and also just giving them, if you're having an altercation or a moment with them, just giving them a little bit of control over a choice. So not trying to give a direct demand, but giving them a choice. Do you want an apple or an orange? And making them choose.
As a school principal, some of the trauma-informed practices that I use to support children who have experienced trauma include being that safe adult that a child can rely on. I really work hard, on being predictable, giving some firm boundaries, and showing care, emotional care. I also believe that building a strong relationship and a healthy relationship with the child and their adults, whoever those adults may be, creating a team approach, taking into consideration cultural backgrounds, life experiences, having compassion for our children. And I also spend a fair chunk of time researching and reading what I can on trauma-informed practice, as it seems to be evolving constantly.
Yeah, that's at times I work one-on-one with students, and other times with a group of students. I have learned so much taking the Trauma and Resilience Cross Lifespan course this term. I'm going to focus on that trauma-informed kit. I will start applying the new skills with the students who might experience in their lives. The trauma-informed kit tool, the awareness and the safety, the collaboration and choice, strength-based approach, and culture and historical and gender.
Sometimes it can be perhaps you have a different educational philosophy. Maybe they don't understand the impacts of trauma, or maybe they think they should just get over it by now. So sometimes working with a coworker, if you don't have similar beliefs in how to approach a child with trauma, there could be inconsistencies.
That's an interesting one. Some challenges that I have experienced with other staff members include the lack of understanding about what trauma is and how to best support children who have experienced that early trauma. And sometimes a challenge that I can experience is if that trauma has triggered a staff member, then it can put them into those same reactionary modes, fight, flight, or freeze with the adults as well.
I am mindful teachers have 20 students in a classroom. I give them the support regarding the student to overlook the challenges and my coworkers and help them the best way I can with the student. By the time I get to the classroom, the teacher is already feeling overwhelmed with whatever happened. And I just nod my head and I take the student with me.
Families, they love their children so much that sometimes when you're meeting, it could almost feel like an attack on the parents themselves, but it's not. So sometimes there could be tears, it could be highly emotional. Maybe sometimes parents have a sense of failure, but that's not the case. And just really developing the relationship with the family as well is critical.
Some of the challenges that I've experienced with families include denial that there has been any childhood trauma. And not always denial. I think sometimes it is really the full understanding of what has taken place for that child. And sometimes the trauma has not been just for that child, but has been for the whole family. So it's helping to guide them as well, and removing that whole guilt and shame that often comes with, or can come with trauma. But I've also experienced the flip side where parents have said, no, you just need to use tough love. Children will get it. This is it. This is minor. It doesn't matter. They can get over it. So there's two sides that I have experienced.
Some of the challenges that I have with families, including their phone numbers are out of service. They no longer live at the current address. Some families deny their child misbehaving in the school and don't listen. A parent might break down crying during an individual education plan meeting, thinking it's their fault. And some parents behave as if they don't even know their child.
every child is different and every child is unique. So depending on the trauma, that can be different as well, and just really listening to the child, understanding what their needs are, whether it's food, whether it's just a soft landing, whether it's just making good connections and making them feel good about themselves, whatever it may be, just listening to the child and directing their educational plan based on that.
In some ways that brought some of those emotional experiences to the surface.
Yeah.
For me, I have to say that my overall experiences working with children who have experienced trauma is probably as diverse as the trauma they have experienced.
Exactly.
There's really no one way to best describe the experience other than to say it's hard work,
Yeah.
it's emotionally, physically, and cognitively draining on all of the people who are involved with it.
Yeah.
For us, when you help to make a breakthrough for a child or for a family, it can be extremely rewarding.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, when you see that child is struggling and nothing you do
Yeah.
seems to impact,
Yeah.
I can feel that I get in that place of overwhelmness
Yeah.
or helplessness.
Yeah.
I really have experienced that whole spectrum over my career,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I form relationships with the students I'm working with at the school. If the child is separate from their parent or their caregiver, or they become ill, then I support them without re-traumatizing them. Be there for the students, whatever they're experiencing.
My self-care is I try not to check my email after hours, and I used to get in the habit of that. I would check it after work, but the work never ends. So having set timelines on when to check my email, that's been the most helpful for me.
Well, that has evolved. From my early years to where I am now,
Yeah.
I really learned the power of debriefing situations and reflecting with my colleagues and peers. That has really helped.
Yeah.
I use meditation as well as walking in nature or spending time at the ocean when I have
Yeah.
really tough days.
Yeah.
I also spend extra time with my children and husband celebrating the gifts that I have in my life.
I seek spiritual guidance from my First Nations community, my strong religious beliefs, and simple meditation. Sometimes I go for walks or smudge myself off with traditional medicines to help me to let go of the energy that I might bring home to my husband and daughter. All these are very important for me because I just do not want to bring it home and think about it from what I experience with the young people that I work with, or my coworkers, or the families that I work with. I just choose to let it go, find different ways to help me to take care of myself.
I wonder if trauma was looked at as a type of designation when we think about classroom composition.
Yeah.
The thing about trauma is that it takes so much time that a teacher might not have to connect with a child, and if that was considered in classroom composition, maybe that would help. And just having supports, having that extra adult in the classroom is big. Yeah.
My personal belief is that we need to provide education around trauma-informed practices that work for students, and that be a continuous learning experience in that the information continues to evolve. I really believe with the way our world is nowadays
Yeah.
that having a full-time counselor and CYC workers
Yeah.
within all schools,
Yeah.
specifically elementary schools,
Exactly.
is really important.
Yeah.
I think that we need to be compassionate and intentional with our language and our
Yeah.
behaviors with students.
Yeah.
And we need to be strength-based when talking about children rather than deficit-based. I think those are
Yeah.
some cognitive things that we can do.
My coworkers and I have viewed some trauma-informed practices, materials during our professional day training, and I could tell that we all learned a lot.
I think having someone to collaborate with, someone on all fronts of trauma. Sometimes behavior overlooks the emotional parts of trauma, but maybe just having a trauma expert who could help, who I could email or contact and just get some strategies. That would probably be the most helpful.
Nice. Jennifer, I would like to thank you for taking the time to answer all my questions. And thank you for participating in my presentation. I really appreciate it.
I think that there's some similarities in what schools can do to support
Yeah.
students and what schools can do to support staff. I think again it's around the education around trauma-informed practices that work for students,
Yeah.
but I think we also need to tie it in and recognize that we as educators have had some potentially traumatic experiences in our lives. Learn to recognize those triggers and how to help support us. I think again having full-time counselors and CYC workers within schools. I think as much as we are compassionate and intentional with our students, I think that we need to be compassionate, intentional, and inclusive with all of our staff members, staff to staff. And I also believe that a piece that's really instrumental and powerful is creating strong relationships with the community and the agencies within our communities to best support our adults as well as our students.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
asking.
And thank you for participating.
Thank you for helping me to reflect a little bit deeper on trauma-informed practice.
We have counselors at the school district available with the Vancouver Island Counseling if we need to talk to somebody professionally regarding the experience. So we do get emotional support from the School District 79. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for watching me answer these questions, and thank you for listening to my other two co-workers that I work with at the school district. And I greatly appreciate your time of viewing my presentation. And I would like to thank Stephanie for teaching us this past year. Have a good day, have a good week. Bye.